Aloha. Thank you for joining us again for AJ and 8. Last week when we talked about microgrids, one of the things that people questioned and had a lot of inquiries about was the conversation of resiliency and the topic of being able to keep the power on and keep the lights on whenever these shutoffs happen and when the power goes out. And our biggest question, and it was interesting that so many people were inquiring about this, was what is a public safety power shutoff? I just, growing up in California, that's definitely not a norm, but if you were here within the past year and a half, 2 years, you would have seen the evolution of how these public safety power shutoffs came to be. And that's something that is now a big part of life in California, are these public safety power shutoffs. So that's going to be our topic of today, is what is a public safety power shutoff? Why is it important to us? And how does it affect us? So this is the thing that makes it difficult for me. This all started, a lot of this conversation started because of the wildfires in 2018. And in Northern California, the wildfires were coming through and ended up devastating town after town. And one town in particular, the city of Paradise, was just decimated. 85 lives were lost. And I remember going through the city of Paradise and just seeing the devastation. It was just absolutely, it gets etched in your head. And you just can't forget those pictures. I've seen families that have lost so much, and I've met the people that have lost not just property but lives. So it was through that fire that in May of 2019 that the California Public Utility Commission approved the wildfire mitigation plan that allowed the major utilities to de-energize or institute what is now known as the Public Safety Power Shutoff, in which if winds are high, humidity is low, and there's a chance for wildfire spread because of this condition, the utilities have the ability now to shut off parts of the grid. And their first implemented public safety power shutoff, as it relates to this new passing of this wildfire mitigation plan that was approved, happened in June of 2019. Less than a month later, Pacific Gas and Electric implemented their first public safety power shutoff. It affected 5 counties and almost 23,000 customers. The interesting part about this is that it's non-discriminatory. When they shut off the grid, they shut off the grid. It doesn't matter whether you have a small home or a large home. It doesn't matter whether you're a small business or a large business. It just, when they shut off the power, they shut off the power. And at the end of the day, we're all screwed. Okay? So it really changes the dynamics here, because before, California had these wildfire seasons and we had to prepare for them. What we have realized is that California is now in a year-round wildfire season. It's just constantly happening. We always have to be on the lookout. We always have to be on the guard to ensure that safety is of its highest order. And that's where the utilities are having to decide what to do. The utilities' job is to get power to all of us in the safest manner possible. So as much as it really doesn't do well for us when they do shut off the power, it really puts us in a much more challenging situation when we look at the utility and say, you could have prevented that fire if you would have shut off the equipment. So it's not a good predicament to be in as a utility, to have to decide, do I shut off the power to 20,000 people, or do I just leave the power on so that I don't get sued? But then there's a potential that people's lives might be lost. So, I think we need to start taking responsibility, and we need to start ensuring that we can help support the needs of ourselves, our families, and our communities first and foremost, right? Because things are going to happen. Hurricanes happen, we look at all the challenges that are going on the East Coast with floods and with hurricanes and tornadoes and power getting shut off. Right now, like I said last week, the topic of conversation is COVID-19. That's definitely it. Stay-at-home orders. But just yesterday, Danville, here in California, had their power shut off for 8 hours. Pacific Gas and Electric started to work on their wildfire mitigation plans, preparing for this upcoming wildfire season. And they went and started to upgrade equipment and make sure that everything was okay, so that if this happens, everything would be fine. And next thing you know, families are without power for 8 hours in the city of Danville. That's a challenge. And that's what we talked about last week. When more and more people, families, are working from home, children are at home because they can't go to school, when you've got power shut off for 8 hours, that's a real upset to life. So I think it becomes incumbent upon each and every one of us to start finding what we can do to help protect ourselves, prepare ourselves. It's time for us to be proactive. Don't wait for them to implement it. It's something that we already know. We know they're going to do it. They have to do it. So why sit here and cry and gripe and moan? Just do something. Worst case scenario, go find the generator and start figuring out how to use it, make sure it works, make sure that you know what you're going to do. Start creating the plans of action to ensure that you, your family, and those around you are safe. When power goes out, it's an unspoken rule. But what I learned is that utilities help each other out. So if there's a power shut off because of accident or because of purposefully shutting it off, the utilities try to help each other and go out and help work on lines and try to restore power as quickly as possible. The one thing that we have to realize is that in this COVID-19 state, the rules of engagement have changed. The utility lineman cannot just go out there and get 15 people on a job. So the recovery effort is going to be longer. It's going to be much more challenging and much more involved. We won't have the short downtimes that we all hope for. So I recommend that each and every one of us take this responsibility serious. Go find out what it is to protect ourselves. And again, look for a microgrid. Go learn about microgrids. I'm telling you, this is what's going to help us in this long run of what's going to be coming down the pipe. Thank you for joining us on AJ and 8. Take care.